Okay, great. Just gonna take a second to be sure that this is working and everybody can hear and see me okay. Maybe give me a thumbs up, somebody, if you can hear or see me. Okay, great, perfect. Hold on one sec, I'm just getting a chat. Making sure everything's working. Okay, perfect. All right, everyone can hear me, I'm told, over chat. So good to start. Let's just triple confirm. Da-da-da. I think yes. Hold on. Okay, perfect. Yes, good to go. All right, so hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited. Oh, that's a nice glare. Maybe we won't do Bear Me without the glasses. I'm Elizabeth DeMeo. I'm an associate editor at Tin House. And again, I just wanted to say thanks so much for coming to this virtual event. I would like to start with just a few introductions. First, with our interpreters this evening, Dresden Lamar, who is interpreting me right now, and Ashley McHenry, who you'll also see. I've had the chance to work with both of them just a bit in preparing for this event, and they are both fantastic, and I am so appreciative of the work that they do. Dresden and Ashley, a huge thank you to both of you. I'd next like to introduce Khadijah Queen, who is our host for this evening. She is an incredible writer herself, in addition to the writers who are here tonight. She has a number of books, one of which is Anodyne, which is on the Tin House list. It's a smart and beautiful and thoughtful collection of poems, and it came out last August. So I encourage everyone to check that out if you haven't already. It should be available online or at your local indie bookstore. And that's also the case with everything being read from tonight. Yashwina from our team at Tin House will be linking to each book in the chat as the poets read. And if there's anything you hear that really strikes you tonight, we encourage you to visit your local bookstore's website or call them up and place a pre-order in the months ahead. One of my favorites, independent stores for poetry, is Open Books in Seattle. And if any of the poets here tonight have a local bookstore they'd like to highlight, please feel free. We're always trying to support those. Just a couple quick notes in terms of format. Khadijah is going to do introductions of the poets, and they're each going to begin with a few poems from their forthcoming collections. Oh, I see a shout out. Yes, Morgan, Open Books. Each poet's going to read a couple of poems, and then there will be a Q&A. And during that, we encourage you to use the Q&A feature in Zoom if you have a question. Khadijah will be keeping an eye out for that. So just have that in your mind in case questions come up during the readings. Know that there's going to be time for that. And also, as they're reading, access copies of all of the poems, as well as bios for everyone reading tonight, are available on Google Drive. Yashwin is going to put a link for that in the chat in just a second, so you can follow along with those if that works better for you. And then after the brief Q&A, everyone is going to read one final poem and talk a little bit about it, and then we will be finished. So that covers everything from me, and I am going to turn things over to Khadijah. And one more time to everybody, our readers, our guests, welcome. We're so excited.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you, Yash. And I see Lance in the chat. Thank you all for joining us. I am here from Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute territory. I encourage you to find out what the traditional territory is that you live on, and be aware that in your everyday practice. So we've got an incredible lineup for you today. I am going to first introduce Raymond Antrobus. And I saw this FRSL and I didn't know what it was, but it means Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. And he was born in London to an English mother and Jamaican father. He was awarded the 2017 Jeffrey Dermer Prize, judged by Ocean Vuong, as well as the 2019 Sunday Times University of Warwick Young Writer of the Year Award. His debut collection of poems, The Perseverance, which you'll hear today, won the Ted Hughes Award, the Rathbones Folio Prize, and the Somerset Maugham Award, and it was named a Poetry Book of the Year by The Guardian. His second full-length collection of poems, All the Names Given, is forthcoming from Tin House and Picador in 2021. Raymond is currently based between London and Oklahoma City. Welcome, Raymond Antrobus.
Cool. Thank you, Khadijah. An honor to be here and to be reading with such great poets. So yeah, I'm going to read from this book here, with the Perseverance, which will be out in a couple of weeks in the US. I've been thinking about which poem to read. I think I'm going to read the title poem. Is always a moment when you get a collection, for me anyway, like there's that moment when you're reading a book and you get to the title poem and you stop and you're paying extra kind of attention to that poem. Like why does this poem ground everything else that's in the book? So I'm going to read that poem, and I hope that answers some of the questions. Just to say that the book pretty much ruminates on losing my dad. We were pretty close. He was a Rastafarian as well at the time when he passed. His favorite singer was one of the Wailers called Peter Tosh. So this poem begins with a line from Peter Tosh. And anything else you say about this poem? Probably not. I'll just read it. Anyway, The Perseverance. Oh, The Perseverance is the name of the pub that Dad used to drink in. The Perseverance. Love is the man overstanding, Peter Tosh. I wait outside the Perseverance, just popping in here for a minute. I'd heard him say it many times before, like all kids with a drinking father. Watch him disappear into smoke and laughter. There is no such thing as too much laughter, my father says, drinking in the Perseverance until everything disappears. I'm outside, counting minutes, waiting for the man, my father, to finish his shot and take me home before it gets dark. We've been here before. No such thing as too much laughter, unless you're my mother without my father, working weekends while the Perseverance spits him out for a minute. He gives me 50p to make me disappear. 50p in my hand, I disappear like a coin in a parking meter before the time runs out. How many minutes will I lose listening to the laughter spilling from the Perseverance where strangers ask, where is your father? I stare at the doors and say, my father is working. Strangers who don't disappear, but hug me for my Perseverance. Dad said this will be the last time before of a TV spilled canned laughter, us on the sofa in his council flat, knowing any minute the yams will boil, any minute I will eat again with my father who cooks and serves laughter, good as any Jamaican who disappeared from the island I tasted before overstanding our heat and Perseverance. I still hear popping in for a minute, see him disappear. We lose our fathers before we know it. And I am still outside the Perseverance, listening for the laughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Wow, indeed. Gorgeous. Yes, all of that. I have questions. I'm saving them for the Q&A. Morgan Parker is a poet, essayist, and novelist. She is the author of the young adult novel Who Put This Song On? In the poetry collections, There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce, and Magical Negro, which won the 2019 National Book Critics Circle Award and the California Book Award. Parker's debut book of nonfiction is forthcoming from One World. She is the recipient of a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, winner of a Pushcart Prize, and has been hailed by the New York Times as a dynamic craftsperson of considerable consequence to American poetry. Amen to that. Morgan Parker.
Thank you so much, Khadijah, and thank you to all the other poets that are here. It's so much fun to be able to celebrate y'all's new books and us being pressmates. And I'm ready for the Tin House bus where we can kind of do a tour. Tommy and I have been talking about this for a while, so just a reminder that I'm here for it. So this book that's coming out is not new, but it's a re-release of my first book, which is a little bit weird for me because it contains some of the first poems I ever wrote. And I'm more grown up now, I would like to think, but I I'm sure you'll see the youth and you'll see the same person I am today. So I'm just gonna, per a preview, read the first poem and the last poem. There are other things I want to explain, but they are mysteries. What is usually said about love, I ignore. Worship instead the wilted flowers gleaming in our throats. What you don't know is I envy this world and I want to save it. Squeeze its bloodied hand like so, saying, this will sting, but only for a minute. Our primary concern will always be the gnawing feeling. Like when I wake up to wonder how many serial killers have entered my life, how the truth can feel like anthills, their sandy curves, their tiny crests like nipples. What I really want to ask is, what do you think of the idea of progress? And is it an injury I can fix? When I ordered this book, it's the first book I ordered, I remember being like, I'm just gonna go from happiest to saddest. I don't know if I achieved that, but this is a pretty dark situation. Other people's comfort keeps me up at night. Today, darling, I am rising from the lavender bathtub of self-loathing. I don't take drugs to shut up. I take off my pants when I get home and I stay there. Red cup full of cigarettes from heaven, ghosts of all my friends between my toes. I imagine them pouring vodka all over each other, wearing glitter. The vision is closing in like a tight dress. Meanwhile, the moon fills gray-green. The shops in the village are leaking bodies. Spilt oil rolls over cash like hands. Some glorious bullshit. What bothers me is the weight of clouds under your fire escape. Your hand, strange lines I feel and can't. One shared breath of all the bulldogs in the park. How I don't notice an inch below something wriggling in dark warmth, as if love or hunger never counted, and I was never meant to last. The nervous breakdown doesn't end. It was only sleeping. And comes back good and rested, smearing its eye boogers all over, says, you're an arrogant prick. I say, fuck you, nervous breakdown. It says, open the curtains and look down at all the people, or you may share your bed only with me. I accidentally say, okay. When I can't sleep, I smoke a dark cigarette and keep the curtains closed so I can lose track of where I am and who is here with me. I cut the faces out of magazines and pile them in the middle of my hardwood floor. In the distance, that good old rock and roll. This isn't simple if you want it to be. What my country does for me is enter me like a room, becomes the furniture, the wall, the painting on the wall, the white spot where painting used to sing. Singing enters me, becomes the window. Baby, think of my skin as the best part of the song. Take me by the ribs and lay me at the bottom of a dirty creek where I can get a good view. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Morgan. Oh man, I remember when this book first came out and I still think about that title quite often. Sometimes people will say they're uncomfortable and then I'll quote the title and then they'll be quiet. All right, next we have Melissa Broder. Melissa Broder is the author of the novels Milk-Fed and The Pisces, the essay collection So Sad Today, and 5 poetry collections, including Superdoom, how's that for a title? Selected poems coming this summer from Tin House. She lives in Los Angeles. Broder has written for the New York Times, Elle.com, Vice, Vogue Italia, and New York Magazine's The Cut. Her poems appear in Poetry, the Iowa Review, Guernica, Fence, and more. She is the winner of a Pushcart Prize for Poetry, and she joins us. Welcome to Melissa.
Thank you. This is so pleasurable for a computer event. Okay, so I'm gonna read 2 poems from Superdoom, which is a collection that's coming out from Tin House in August that is a bunch of books of mine that are no longer in print, selected poems from them, and then also selected poems from Last Sext, which is a Tin House book. So it's all the stuff. Okay, this poem is called Judgment. When the preacher comes to town, I try to hump the preacher. I try to hump angels. I cannot untouch sublime beings. My guardian angels are mine and all for me. When they leak me. Still there are cracks between us, and you have to fill up cracks with candy. If I am not allowed candy, I use my body. If I am not allowed my body, I use the internet. Television is going to deliver me from the internet. The angels pray over my screens. The angels are probably lonely, also disillusioned with me. I have always felt the presence of a disappointed being. The preacher says, I am not dead. I am definitely dying. I'm already digging out of my coffin. I dress in cicada skins. I go bright blonde. I wasn't blonde when I wrote this poem, but now I am. Above me is the blonde angel Raphael, and I try to make the blonde angel French me. The blonde angel has a thick tongue. He wants to talk about healing, the violence no one has done to me. Every violence I have done to me. When I leak me. What was so hell that I violenced me, that I knifed the wounds into my wings? There were always beautiful horses. There were cracks in all the horses. When I stuffed their mouths with candy, they turned to rotten. I made candy luncheons in the pasture. It tasted very desire. I poured cherry soda into all my cracks. Tell the angels to give me sugar if they do not want to hump me. A supreme being should heal me, but only for forever. And then I'm going to read one more poem. These are both from an out-of-print collection called Scarecrow that a bunch of the poems in Scarecrow are in Superdoom. Okay, this is called Spirit Fear. The room where I will die is everywhere. I am hiding from a signal on the road. Signal from the angels or signal from the mother. Signal from the dog, who is a wolf, who is me. Signal from myself that I gag not to hear. Signal from the earth and under the earth. And I hear the roar of the walls. I eat a young man in the room of my death. I make everyone into a lantern. I make pockets of darkness so the room looks like heaven. And I declare my love to the darkness, its cocks and its holes, like my cocks and my holes. Stick a rag in my mouth for my lover. Make the dead smell like the dead. Thank you.
Okay, with all those transformations, Melissa. Before I read Rachel Long's bio, I just want to remind y'all that the Q&A function is there for you to ask questions of our readers this evening. Please put your questions in the Q&A rather than the chat so that we can be aware of them for the Q&A that will follow. And now I'm going to introduce our final reader who will be joining us via pre-recorded video. Rachel Long is a poet and the founder of Octavia Poetry Collective for Women of Color, which is housed at South Bank Center in London. Ugh, I miss London. My Darling from the Lions, first published by Picador in 2020, is her debut collection. It has been shortlisted for the Forward Prize for Best First Collection, the Costa Prize, the Rathbones Folio Prize, and is currently long listed for the Jollick Prize for Book of the Year by a writer of color. Rachel was born in London and she resides there today. And now we're going to her video.
We're eating roses on a rooftop, the med beneath us. They serve clouds here too, I say. Light starter? Wink. Are they fluffy or black? The waiter doesn't answer. Every table is white except ours. We sit at a naked woodblock. Antique. There's enough of an age gap here. Need they have added 200 years? The razor clams arrive in straight lines. What's the matter? We discuss kids. Maybe it's the wine, or because my belly is beginning to push against the bones of my dress. You say, I don't think I'll identify with a brown sun. Excuse me, I rise, spill your sparkling water. You only notice your steak. Contorting myself 3 ways in the toilet mirror, I decide I won't look like this forever. I don't even look like this now. Dessert is air from a porcelain pump. What if he has your eyes? I dare, after another glass. Back in our borrowed bathroom, I throw up. Rose foam, a blade of grass. Who says he isn't a daughter? I join you on the balcony. You hold me from behind, lean us over, count. We're as many stories up as our age gap. Why do you always have to? Shush. You lift my dress. I shoulder width my legs. Is love not this? Gripping a fence in the sky. Pause. Last night, I missed my train by seconds. So close that one part of me did catch it and waved from the window to the other half, still panting on the platform, tits play-dohing out of a shit bra. I couldn't sleep. For an hour and a quarter, the exact time between the 2 slices of me reaching home in separate taxis, each driven by a brother who co-owned the firm. Today, I'm assuming the recovery position in my favorite outfit, a jumper with just knickers, the perfect hot-cold combo, like a bowl of baked crumble and ice cream. I am magazine educated, so I've known for a while now that my body is an apple. Supporting theory. I bruise so easy, I worry it's leukemia. No, the doctor says again, it's just your dark skin. She recommends scar serum. When I was bored after service, Mum still counting the collection, then insisting on sweeping from altar to street, I'd sit in front of a pillar, playing with my brain Barbie. She was brown with tattoos, and I made her have sex with a grown man in a toilet cubicle. I don't remember her face, or her body, nor what I named her. Something beginning with N. When the mum of my then best friend said her daughter wasn't allowed to play with me because I was another N-word, meaning Mum went round in her dressing gown to slap her silly with her tongue, then returned to scatter the kitchen and shred Dad's guardian for not sticking up for us, for never saying anything. After that, I had a sleep dream in which I grew a bright green face, Granny Smith-hued, high polished. And even though I was green, I was the most beautiful woman in the world. I had the best hair and even did humanitarian work. I was interviewed about both things each night for TV.
All right. I think a breath. And I have a question based on Rachel's poems for all of you. Her work made me think about, of course, race, but also like with that first poem, art and travel and time, what we perceive and ingest, and what those things have to do with safety and the cost of constant vigilance. So my question for all of you is, how do poetry and fiction shape our perceptions or help to shape our perceptions? And can its dramatization of discernment actually make us shift our thinking and then our actions accordingly? Does literature have that power? What are your feelings about that?
Will you repeat the second part of that?
Yes. So how do poetry and fiction shape our perceptions? And can the dramatization of discernment in poetry and or fiction make us shift our thinking and thus then our actions?
You know, I think for me, it's about definitely accessibility, and communication. So much of our media communicates with like 10% of the population. And so I think grounding perspectives elsewhere obviously makes such a big difference. And I also think it changes our minds about what is possible. And what kind of connection is possible and what kind of articulation is possible and what kind of love is possible. For me, that's kind of what poetry does for me. If I just watched TV all the time, I would think that love is for white women. So it's like, I think literature has this way of getting underneath and past the visual and connecting to all different kinds of people on that level.
Yeah, I agree with what Morgan's saying there. I'm thinking about my practice as a teacher. Like I've spent years teaching, and how part of my pedagogy is always that I can never ask my students to do something that they haven't seen me do, or seen me put myself through. So a lot of my work, a lot of my poems. Well, not a lot, quite a few of the poems I've written had been like to model for my students, to share a experience or an idea or something that happened, and then put that into a kind of poetry form and build up from there, where we can then talk about, figurative language a bit later on, but we ground it. I guess my practice is also in emotional literacy, where students feel a kind of connection emotionally with what they're being exposed to. Yeah, so that's kind of picking up on like Morgan's idea of like modeling.
And also, the way you said that, like feeling, I think it's about allowing yourself to be surprised at what makes you feel connection. I think so. When I teach, I always talk about subjective truth, and how understanding something isn't necessarily about intellectually grasping it. Understanding comes on a different level also. So yeah, I like the way you said that about them having to feel the understanding. I think that's like a big part of what literature does for us, because a lot of things just can't be said in a way that is within the familiar, vocabulary that we have.
I also
So
think
like
that
the work of feeling, and then therefore it's valued. Go ahead, Melissa.
I was just going to say, I feel like there can be no discernment without pause. And poetry is one of the few places that I notice where there's room for pause. Like there's white space, there's negative capability, there's unanswered questions that are allowed to exist as unanswered questions. So in that silence or in that pause, we can get still enough for like discernment to begin.
And imagination.
All of those things are related, right? Work, imagination, feeling, and poetry offering the space for it. Yes. Raymond, did you want to add?
Oh, no, not at all. I was completely agreeing. Yeah, no, I was agreeing.
Cool. Well, I might as well then just like ask my question to you. I think I'm going out of order, but that's fine. I'll be out of order. So I just want a moment of appreciation for that Peter Tosh epigraph, a moment. And I found myself thinking about that line, "We lose our fathers before we know it." Could you talk about the sort of existential struggle to understand ourselves through our parents and our childhood experiences, like the value of time and the immutable nature of perception? I could get all doctoral with it, but I'm gonna be quiet now.
Wow, Khadijah Queen does not mess about with these questions. The existential kind of questions that are invoked by our parents, and I guess I should say that, like, one thing I can say is that this poem, that the Perseverance, is a poem which is, it's a sestina. I know you've got a sestina as well in your amazing book, and I remember being like, oh, the sestinas, god damn it. And I know maybe many poets kind of try to write sestinas, and we fail miserably most of the time. This is probably my only successful sestina, but just to ground, like, when I first wrote the first draft of this poem, it's because I kept, it was a few months after losing my dad, and I just kept dreaming about him. He was like everywhere, and that memory kind of came back to me. I had never thought of it when he was alive, and it just came back to me how many memories I have being left outside this pub. And the area that I'm from in East London, in Hackney, is now like a very gentrified area, and so it's so much of the landscape has changed. And yet this pub, the Perseverance, perseveres through this time. So the way that I found, like, the title and the language in that, and how the language conveyed the truth which I needed to unlock the poem. And so I'm completely at service of the language to kind of guide me through this particular memory. So when I wrote the first draft of this poem, and I naturally saw there were 6 words that repeated. Usually you do that thing of like choosing the 6 words that you'll repeat, but they just kind of naturally came in the first few stanzas. And when I was like, oh my God, I think I'm writing a sestina. And I just kind of carried that through, and where I just, the form kind of just led me to that. How did that, how did that measure, I guess, to my father, who he was, who he is, who I am. I think that's one of the kind of, I don't know, mystical qualities of poetry, right? The way that you can learn this form and access that somehow, you know, through this, through this like these troubadour poets in Europe came up with this form like 500 or 600 years ago, and then still kind of finding a device in which to explore your own kind of memory and truth.
Right,
Yeah.
so the timelessness of that form, as well as just like the timelessness of the genre.
Right.
Yes, and still we have this method of invention. So my question for Melissa is, can you talk about the role of invention in your writing practice and in your thinking, especially as it concerns the relationship between technology and the body? Because you have that one line, if I am not allowed my body, I use the internet, which is so relatable right now. We're all on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, invention, you know, I'm supposed to write an introduction. I'm writing an introduction for Superdoom. And earlier I was taking a depression nap and realized that I have like 2 weeks left to write the introduction. And I was thinking, what do I want to say? And I think the first thing I want to say is, I don't know if I remember how to write a poem anymore. I don't know who wrote these poems. And and I don't know how I wrote these poems, but the poet Muriel Rukeyser says that you just need to be a scarecrow for poems to land on. And for me, that is very much like to be a scarecrow or to be a channel, right? Like there is something mysterious about the arrival of the poems and sort of the departure of the muse, and you know, and I think that it's like we invent the poems, but the poems also invent us. And again, it is about, I think that, well, it's about pause, but also I like, you know, I'll say this. When I lived in New York for a number of years, and I wrote most of my poems were written there. And then I moved to California, and I could no longer type my poems on the subway. And I started dictating in my car, and my line breaks disappeared. And that was how I got sucked into writing prose. And now I'm like, fuck, dude, could I even write a poem? So I do think technology has deeply impacted the forms that my writing takes. Simply subway versus car.
You know, I had that feeling, like I was commissioned to write something, a poem, and because they were paying me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, even though I don't think I could write a poem. I haven't written a poem in months, but you know what? I remembered how to write a dang poem. And guess what? I also used couplets, because one of my students said they hated couplets, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna write some fucking couplets. So that's what I did, and it was fun, and I loved it. And it felt like a return home. And I want to ask one last question of Morgan. And I'm so excited to see this book reissued. The line of yours that I was thinking about is, I envy this world and I want to save it. And to me, that says something like love. And and I also want to say there is love in these poems. It's difficult and frustrated and iridescent, and traveling through comparisons and conversations with the self and with other people and with culture, much like some of the other poems, but there's a use of dialogue in your poems that I think is really interesting. So could you talk about how you think about dialogue in your work alongside the complexity of an emotion like love, or the conversation between emotions in your poems?
Yeah. I rely on a lot of voices, and I need them all in there. And Other People's Comfort Keeps Me Up at Night is the most crowded of all my books. I always talk about it as like, it's literally a party. Like every single room is like a whole different vibe. And, you know, I think of There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce is like after the party. Like the party has just happened, but now you're by yourself at home, you know? So I think this one in particular, also, you know, that probably has to do with New York as well, and youth and being at a lot of parties when I'm writing these, and also just trying to find which voices felt most comfortable and uncomfortable to me. So I talk to myself a lot, plus I think I have a lot of different folks up here. Plus I'm having conversations with friends, I'm having conversations with celebrities and ideas. So that feels, the tension that happens in those conversations feels really central to, for me, figuring out what the poem is. You know, like it comes up in that dialogue. Yeah, the idea of, I usually start with some kind of a question or an open-ended thing. And so to be able to talk it out, really, it's almost like its own little therapy couch. My therapists, you know, plural, are in all of my books. And that feels, you know, that feels important too, because as a vessel, you know, as the poet, the bard, I'm not the only voice that's coming in. You know, I take a lot of notes. A lot of the lines are from housewives or from friends of mine, and that really, it makes the character the eye of the voice. So it feels like all of these kind of languages and registers and folks need to make themselves available, I guess, in the poems. But yeah, that I think that was definitely like a big project of this book, and it also had to do with me figuring out which, you know, which lane I liked or which was most comfortable, and really just trying out a bunch of different stuff. It's also my Jay-Z period, so I was very like taking on other voices. You know, I hadn't written the Beyonce book, but this was like my dipping my toe into like taking on other voices to see what it would do to my voice, you know, and see what it would do and open up to like what I feel allowed to say, basically.
Yes, and what kind of a home you're going to make for those voices in your own voice in the poems. We are at 5:47, so I'm going to ask y'all to read your last poems. I think our order was Raymond, Morgan, Melissa, Rachel. So maybe we'll just go and I won't interrupt you. Oh, Rachel's video first, sorry. Rachel first. I'll put the order in the chat.
Final poem that I'll read. Sorry, I was just thinking in the prep for this, in the emails that I've been having back and forth with the incredible Elizabeth, Elizabeth said, perhaps for your third one, choose a poem that was perhaps the most difficult to write. And I have been thinking about that long and hard. This week has been a even harder week to be a woman in this country. By this country, I mean the UK, but the world over. Kind of how we are reminded minute by minute that we are not safe in our own bodies, in our own streets, or in our own homes, even. And so I think this is not only one of the most difficult poems that I wrote that is part of this collection, but it also, I read it in the midst of a really difficult week. It's called Night Vigil. I was a choir girl, real angel, lightning-faced and giant for my age. Mum let us stay up late if we went with her to night vigil. It started at midnight, a time too exciting to fathom how the minute and the hour stood to attention. During three members' prayer, my sister fell asleep under a chair, so she never knew how I sang or how I fell silent when the evangelist with smiling eyes said in his pulpit voice, "Here, child." Had she woken, I would have told her, "Sleep, sleep," so she'd never know. Smiling eyes also meant teeth, or that he had blown candles for hands with which he led me down an incensed corridor, and I followed.
Raymond, do you have one last poem for us?
Yes, sorry. So the last poem I'm going to read is called Happy Birthday Moon. It's a poem. It was difficult to write because I realized that the question I was asking this poem was, where does language begin for me? And language, I think, began in the kind of very in the physical, real world with my dad reading me children's picture books. And he used to read me this book called Happy Birthday Moon. It was about this bear that would go out into the forest. And this one particular night, you might know this book, and he looks up at the moon and says, "It's my birthday." And the bear's voice echoes through the valley and the trees and the river. And then he hears the voice again, says, "It's my birthday." So the bear thinks that it's the moon's birthday as well as his own. And so my dad would read me this story, and I'd ask him to read it to me every night. And I'm deaf, and my dad didn't know I was deaf, and even my parents knew I was deaf until I was a bit older, around 6, 7 years old. But my dad had a very deep voice. He had a very kind of heavy presence of a man. And so instinctively, I would lie on his chest while he read to me. The book would be out in front of him. And so kind of tapping into, that memory, but also that the sound and the resonance and the repetition as well that appears in this poem. So this is my final poem. Thank you so much for everyone for being here and for listening. Happy Birthday Moon. Dad reads aloud. I follow his finger across the page. Sometimes his finger moves past words tracing white space. He makes the moon say something new every night to his deaf son who slurs his speech. Sometimes his finger moves past words tracing white space. Tonight he gives the moon my name, but I can't say it. His deaf son who slurs his speech. Dad taps the page, says, "Try again." Tonight he gives the moon my name, but I can't say it. I say, "Raynan Akabok." He laughs. Dad taps the page, says, "Try again." But I like making him laugh. I say my mistake again. I say, "Raynan Akabok." He laughs, says, "Raymond, you're something else." I like making him laugh. I say my mistake again. "Raynan Akabok. What else will help us?" He says, "Raymond, you're something else." I'd like to be the moon, the bear, even the rain. Raynan Akabok. What else will help us? Hear each other, really hear each other. I'd like to be the moon, the bear, even the rain. Dad makes the moon say something new every night, and we hear each other, really hear each other. As Dad reads aloud, I follow his finger across the page.
Thank you so much. Such a gorgeous poem. Morgan.
Hello. Raymond, thank you so much. Also, it's just really good to see you and hear your poems. That was fucking beautiful. I can't wait for the book. Yeah, so speaking of my Jay-Z phase, this poem is called Boys, Boys, Boys after Girls, Girls, Girls. It wasn't hard to write. I don't know why I didn't pick something that was difficult to write, probably because, you know, I'm tired of that. But yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say about this, except I'm pretty sure it's the beginning of like me writing poems just to write the last line. Yeah. Also, well, whatever. Boys, boys, boys. Got homies in the deep south and 2 parts of Newark, bartenders in the East Village and West, white-walled bedrooms, their mama's cribs, writing love letters, blowing up my cell, making promises sweet as B-sides to take me to St. Tropez, to jump when my drink looks low. In California, the dudes are so cute, they're stupid. Smash natties on the sides of their skulls, get me high in back seats and the corners of suburban house parties. For years, I've been scattering them. Blue-eyed men coloring one side of the sun, long-haired guys sweaty with trouble, hustlers with shiny rims for teeth, running always from wild plants and police. Applicants without extensive dicks and cash flows need to sit the fuck down. Everyone else, you're all right, except I'll expect you to change for me. I know you won't. I whisper to every boy every morning while he snores, stiff and hairy in my bed. I'll take whatever, but new kicks better be so fly I lose my breath. The wanting more can make a sister crazy. So I settle for free shit, trade you digits for dinner, and treat this like the business it is. I can make a mixtape my own damn self. Thank you guys.
Thank you. My own damn self. Yes. Melissa, take us out.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? They just said that my computer just said that it's unstable.
I see you and hear you fine.
Okay, great. We're stable. All right. This poem is from Last Sex, but it will also be in Superdoom. It's called I'm Coming. The people talked to me of God. Then God talked to me of God. God said, do not move. I said, I know. And then got very still and knew that I was not, and saw our shadows in the room, 2 wild and kindly dogs, leaking light from out their wet jaws, the good of breath from where we all began, though our minds tried to tell a different story, a tale of man and his machete, murder of our dogs when we fake being men, or live a lifetime in the human codes. Fierce we cut the shadows with our seeing eye bones. Gently then we dress the wounds in nothing that will lead us back to earth.
Oh, gorgeousness. I think that we are at time, and I apologize for missing the Q&A things, even though I told y'all to put the questions in the Q&A. I'm sorry. I hope you enjoyed the reading, and I'm going to turn it back over to Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you so much, Khadijah, for hosting. And thank you, Raymond, Morgan, Melissa, and Rachel. Those readings were incredible. You know, I work with these books every day at Tin House, but as you all read, I'm glad you couldn't see me because my makeup was just running, and it's okay now. But I fall in love with these books all over again, and it's a whole nother experience to hear them from you directly. So truly, thank you. It's just a pleasure to be here. Thank you again, Khadijah, for hosting. I so appreciate it, and those questions were so insightful. Thank you to Dresden and Ashley again for interpreting. I think you can see in the comments how much love and appreciation there is for the work you're doing. Yeah, thank you all for coming. This was such a wonderful event. And as I mentioned before, all these collections are forthcoming in the next couple months. You can learn more about them on the Tin House website and find them at your local indie bookshop once they're out. Thank you all. Thank you so much.